A starving old German shepherd was chained behind a gas station, half buried in falling snow. Most people saw ribs, matted fur, and a dangerous problem someone else should handle. But Jack Miller, a retired Navy SEAL, saw something different in the way that Dog watched the road. No begging, no panic, just the stillness of a soldier who had never stopped standing guard. His rusted tag carried a name almost lost to time. Ranger. And before the storm was over, that forgotten K9 would help bring strangers home. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more heartwarming stories of loyalty, courage, and miracles. Snow moved across Silver Creek in slow, white sheets, swallowing the mountain road and turning the old gas station at the edge of town into a lonely box of yellow light. Behind that station, chained to a rusted steel post beneath a sagging awning, stood an old German shepherd most people tried not to see. He had once been large in the proud way working dogs are large, built for speed, discipline, and command. But age had carved valleys between his ribs and left his black and tan coat dull with grime. His muzzle had gone silver, and one ear stood tall while the other bent from an old tear. Yet he did not pull, bark, or beg toward the store windows. He simply watched the road with amber eyes that had forgotten comfort but not duty. Inside Pike's Gas and Mart, Earl Mason complained loud enough for the coffee machine to tremble. Earl was 68, heavy through the belly, with a tobacco-stained mustache and watery eyes that seemed offended by weather, prices, and feelings. He was not a storybook villain. He was the sort of man who could feed a starving dog one day and chain him the next because mercy had become inconvenient. Jack Miller arrived at 8:17 in his tow truck. He was 48, tall and broad-shouldered, with the compact strength of a man whose body still remembered orders. His dark hair was cut short, and a rough beard shadowed a square jaw marked by a pale scar. His gray-blue eyes looked steady, but something tired lived behind them, like winter sky above a battlefield no one mentioned. People knew he had been a Navy SEAL, though Jack had trained the town not to ask. He fixed engines, pulled trucks from ditches, drank black coffee, and disappeared before gratitude became conversation. "Rear brakes froze solid," Earl barked. "Delivery drivers blocking my pump." "You called 20 minutes ago," Jack said. "In this weather, 20 minutes is an insult." Jack did not answer. Machines were easier than men. A frozen brake told the truth. People smiled while drowning. Jack had seen too many men say they were fine right before the world took them. So he kept his words short, his hands busy, and his heart locked behind a door even he no longer knew how to open. He knelt by the delivery truck, sprayed de-icer around the brake housing, and worked the wrench until metal groaned beneath the cold. That was when he felt the stare. Not Earl's, not the delivery driver's, but something older and quieter. Jack looked past the rear wheel toward the awning. The German shepherd was watching him, not begging. Begging would have been easier. This dog watched as if measuring distance, wind direction, exits, threat lines. His body was still, but not empty. Snow gathered along his back and melted into the ruined fur. Beneath the dirt and hunger, something remained upright in him, like a flag no storm had torn down. "Don't start," Earl muttered. "I didn't say anything." "You got that look, the one folks get before they tell me I'm cruel." Jack turned back to the brake. "Are you?" Earl's mouth tightened. "I fed him, gave him hot dogs, put a box out too. Then he scared Mrs. Bell, tore into trash, nearly took a drunk's fingers off." "Did he bite him?" "No, but he would have." Jack cracked the frozen assembly loose, but Earl's excuse stayed under his skin. Out near the pumps, a young man in a lifted pickup fired his engine and revved it hard, making the lot shake with a stupid metallic roar. The German shepherd moved. He did not panic. He did not lunge. He dropped low, chest close to the snow, hind legs tucked beneath him, head angled toward the pickup. His eyes went first to the truck, then to the store door, then to the road, then to the dark pines behind the propane tanks. The chain barely shifted. Every motion was controlled, economical, painfully familiar. Jack's hand froze around the wrench. For one breath, Silver Creek vanished. There was no gas station, no snow, no Earl behind him. There was only dust, heat, a wall of broken stone, and a dog dropping before the first shot because he had heard death before the men had. The young driver laughed and went inside, unaware that he had opened a grave in another man's memory. The old shepherd stayed low, eyes bright, body ready, but not wild. Jack stood slowly, heartbeat too loud beneath his coat. People saw a dangerous stray. Earl saw a lawsuit. But Jack saw training carved into bone. He saw a soldier abandoned at the edge of a road, still guarding a world that had forgotten his name. Jack Miller had just freed the delivery truck's frozen brake when Sheriff Tom Harris rolled into Pike's Gas and Mart with his cruiser lights dimmed against the snow. Tom was 62, tall and narrow as a fence post, with weathered skin, pale brown eyes, and a gray mustache trimmed so neatly it made his tired face look more patient than soft. 30 years of mountain law had taught him that shouting rarely solved anything, and that silence, used correctly, could make guilty people confess to crimes they had not yet admitted to themselves. He stepped out slowly, one gloved hand resting near his belt, not because he expected trouble from Jack, but because the old German shepherd behind the station had already made the whole place feel like a room holding its breath. A white county van came in behind him, its tires hissing over slush. The words Silver Creek Animal Control were painted on the side in blue letters that looked far too cheerful for the work it carried. Linda Parker climbed down from the driver's seat with a folded crate under one arm and a catch-pole in her other hand. She was in her early 50s, broad-hipped and strong from years of lifting frightened animals into cages, with copper-red hair tucked beneath a wool cap and a round, wind-burned face that could turn gentle or hard depending on who was standing in front of her. Linda loved animals with the practical heart of someone who had seen too many people mistake love for good intentions. Last to arrive was Dr. Emily Carter in a dark green Subaru with snow packed along the wheel wells. Emily was 36, lean and sharp-featured with olive skin, dark blonde hair tied in a loose knot, and gray eyes that seemed to weigh every living creature by its pain and its chances. She wore blue scrubs beneath a heavy canvas coat, and the scratch across her wrist suggested she had already lost one argument that morning to a cat. She did not look sentimental. That was what Jack noticed first. She looked useful. "He's around back," Earl Mason said, stepping from the store with his arms crossed over his belly. His voice came out defensive before anyone accused him of anything. "And before anybody starts, I fed him. I put out a box. I called, like I was supposed to." Tom looked past him toward the awning. "Nobody said you didn't. Your face did. My face has been doing things without permission since 1998, Tom said. Linda gave a dry little snort, but Emily had already walked halfway toward the dog. "Don't go straight at him," Jack said before he could stop himself. Emily paused, turning only her head. "You know him?" "No." "But you know something." Jack hated that she heard the shape of truth so quickly. He looked at Ranger, though he did not yet know that was the dog's name. The old German shepherd had risen from the snow. His body was thin enough that the ribs showed beneath the dirty black and tan coat, yet the stance was disciplined. One front paw slightly ahead, shoulders low, silver muzzle pointed toward the humans gathering in his world. The chain hung from a cracked leather collar to the steel post. Not tight, because he was not fighting it. That made it worse. A desperate dog would have barked himself hoarse. This one was saving strength, saving movement, saving something inside him that had once mattered. Linda unfolded the crate near the back of the van. "Shelter's full," she said quietly to Tom. "I can take him, but an old dog with unknown bite history and that kind of stress response won't have much time." Earl looked away, his rough face folding inward. "I don't want him put down. I just can't have him biting customers." "He didn't bite," Jack said. The words were low, but everyone heard them. Earl pointed at him. "You weren't here. You said he nearly did." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" It means he chose not to. Linda studied Jack a little longer, and Jack wished she would stop. Tom did not say anything. Emily crouched sideways several yards from the dog and set a metal bowl of water in the snow. Slow and careful, not making herself too sweet, not insulting the dog with baby talk. Ranger's eyes flicked to the bowl, then back to Linda's pole. His weight shifted half an inch. Jack saw the decision before anyone else did. The dog angled backward and left, placing the steel post between himself and Linda, then turned his shoulder toward the blank wall of the station as if protecting someone hidden behind him. There was no one there, only old siding, a frozen mop bucket, and a stack of empty windshield washer boxes. But Ranger guarded that empty space with the devotion of a soldier covering a fallen friend. Something cold opened beneath Jack's ribs. Linda raised the pole another inch. "Easy, boy." Ranger did not growl. His lips barely moved, but every line of him tightened, old bones and old training gathering into one final warning. Emily stood slowly. "Linda, wait. I can't leave him tied here." "I didn't say leave him." Earl threw both hands up. "For God's sake, it's a dog, not a town council election." Jack's hand moved before his mind gave permission. 2 fingers down, wrist angled slightly outward, palm loose, a small signal born in dust and heat and fear. The old German shepherd dropped flat into the snow, not cowering, not surrendering, waiting. The whole gas station went silent. Even Earl stopped breathing loudly. Ranger's amber eyes locked onto Jack, and Jack felt the years between them collapse like a rotten bridge. He had not meant to reveal anything. His body had answered another body that still spoke the old language. Tom's voice came softly from behind him. "Jack." Jack lowered his hand. "Don't." Emily looked from the dog to Jack, and whatever question she carried, she had the mercy not to throw it at him yet. Linda let the catchpole sink toward the ground. "That wasn't luck." "No," Emily said. "It was memory." Ranger remained flat, chest pressed to snow, head lifted just enough to watch Jack. The water bowl sat within reach now, but he did not drink until Emily backed away and Jack took one slow step to the side. Only then did the dog rise and lower his muzzle, drinking in controlled pulls, pausing twice to scan the lot as though thirst could wait but danger could not. "He needs a vet," Emily said. "Food in small amounts, warm water, a full exam, and someone who understands not to crowd him." "That someone isn't me," Jack said. "Nobody said it was. Your eyes did." Emily almost smiled. Almost. Linda pulled a clipboard from the van. "Temporary custody is an option. 1 night. Keeps him out of the shelter until Dr. Carter can assess him properly." Earl looked relieved too quickly. "Great. Jack'll take him." Jack turned on him with a stare cold enough to shut Earl's mouth. Tom rubbed one hand over his mustache. "I can't order you to do it." "Good. But I can tell you what happens if nobody does." Jack looked at Ranger again. The old dog stood beneath the awning with snow melting off his back in little shining threads. He did not wag his tail. He did not soften his eyes. He simply watched Jack as if waiting to learn whether recognition meant rescue or abandonment with better excuses. Jack thought of driving away. He imagined it clearly. The truck heater, the empty passenger seat, the clean mercy of making this someone else's problem. By nightfall, the dog would be in a cage. By morning, there might be paperwork, judgment, perhaps an ending spoken in calm professional voices. Jack hated that the thought hurt. He hated even more that it should. 1 night, he said. Linda handed him the clipboard before he could become wise again. "Sign here. If he bites, you're responsible." "I know how responsibility works." His name looked too dark on the paper. Emily handed him a small packet of soft food from her medical bag. "Small portions. Don't reach over his head. Don't grab the collar. If he shakes hard, collapses, or refuses water, call me." "You always this cheerful?" "Only when I'm trying not to yell." Linda unclipped the chain from the post but left the short lead attached. Ranger stiffened. Jack stepped into his line of sight, hands low, voice lower. Easy. The word was not command exactly, more like a bridge. The walk to the tow truck took longer than it should have. Ranger moved stiffly, pride fighting pain with every step. At the open passenger door he gathered himself to jump, failed, and landed awkwardly in the snow. Earl winced. Tom looked away. Jack crouched beside the old dog and waited until Ranger looked at him. "Yeah," he murmured. "I know." Then he slid one arm beneath the dog's chest and the other behind his hind legs, slow enough to be refused. Ranger trembled, but did not snap. Jack lifted him into the passenger seat and felt the terrible lightness of him, as if a whole lifetime of a service had been reduced to bones, breath, and stubborn duty. "One night," Jack said again, though no one had asked. Emily closed the truck door gently. Ranger sat upright behind the glass, silver muzzle raised, still watching the road. Jack climbed in beside him, started the engine, and told himself the lie one more time before driving into the snow. Morning came to Silver Creek with a pale blue cold that made every window look older than it was. Jack Miller woke in the chair behind his garage office, one hand still resting near the armrest as if sleep had not fully convinced his body to stand down. The stove in the corner had burned low, leaving the room smelling of ash, motor oil, old leather, and something new: dog breath, wet fur, and the quiet warmth of another living creature. Ranger lay exactly where he had chosen the night before, not on the folded blanket Jack had placed near the stove, but beside the short hallway where he could see the office door, the garage bay, and the side exit at the same time. The old German Shepherd's silver muzzle rested on his paws, but his amber eyes were already open. Jack almost smiled. "Of course," he muttered. "Why sleep warm when you can guard 3 doors and judge my furniture?" Ranger's torn ear shifted, which Jack decided was either acknowledgement or criticism. Maybe both. When the dog tried to stand, his left hip betrayed him first. The movement was small, a hitch hidden beneath pride, but Jack saw it. He had spent years noticing the things men tried to hide: a limp behind a joke, trembling hands behind a coffee mug, terror behind the word fine. Ranger was no different. Pain lived in him, but he carried it like a classified document. Jack warmed the truck, spread a towel across the passenger footwell, and lifted Ranger slowly into the cab. The dog hated being carried. Every stiff muscle said so. Yet he did not snap. He only turned his face toward the window, refusing to look at Jack during the insult to his dignity. "You're welcome," Jack said. Ranger ignored him with military precision. Dr. Emily Carter's clinic sat behind the diner in a squat white building with a green roof and a horseshoe wind chime beside the door. The place had once been a dentist's office, and if a person looked closely, they could still see the faded outline of a smiling tooth under the newer painted paw print. Inside, the waiting room smelled of disinfectant, wet dog, cedar shavings, and lavender that was trying bravely and failing heroically to cover the rest. Emily came out from the exam room before Jack reached the counter. Her dark blonde hair was twisted into a quick knot, and she wore green scrubs under a canvas vest, sleeves pushed to the forearms. A fresh scratch marked one wrist. "Cat?" Jack asked. "Goat," Emily said. "Named Buttercup." "Naturally." Buttercup has strong opinions about hoof care. Jack almost gave her a real smile, but Ranger shifted beside him and the small softness vanished from the room. Emily noticed everything. She turned sideways instead of facing the dog directly and opened the exam room door. "Good morning, old man. Let's not make this dramatic." "I've already had one patient try to climb a wall today." The exam room was bright with reflected snow. Emily laid a rubber mat over the steel table before asking Jack to help lift Ranger. The dog stood rigid once placed on the mat, nails pressing down, head low, eyes measuring Emily, Jack, the door, the window, and the cabinet where the medical tools waited in neat silver rows. Emily did not coo at him. She let him smell the back of her hand, then began with the basic exam: gums, eyes, ears, paws. "Underweight," she said, her voice even. "Not actively dying of starvation this minute, but he's been hungry long enough that his body has started making ugly bargains." Jack stood near Ranger's shoulder without holding him down. "How old? Hard to be exact. 10, maybe 11. For a German shepherd with this kind of wear, that's old enough to have earned better manners from the world." She ran practiced fingers along his ribs and spine. Ranger tolerated it, though his breath changed when she reached the right shoulder. "Old scarring here. Deep. Not from yesterday." She moved to the hips, slower now. "Reduced range on the left. Arthritis in both rear legs. He's been compensating for a long time." Ranger looked away as if embarrassed by his own body. Jack understood that too well. Emily examined the collar next. It was cracked, stiff, and half buried in matted fur, the leather dark with dirt, salt, and old weather. "This has been on too long," she said. The calm in her voice thinned around the edges. Jack knew the sound. It was anger wearing a clean coat. She used small scissors to cut through the matted band around Ranger's neck. The dog stiffened when the blades touched the fur, but Jack tapped 2 fingers lightly against the side of the table. Not a full command, only a reminder. Ranger stilled. Emily glanced at Jack, but did not comment. The collar loosened at last. Beneath it, something small dropped against the metal table with a dull tick. Emily froze. Jack looked down. It was a flat tag, almost black with rust, hanging from a second narrow loop hidden under the collar. Not a store-bought charm, not a county license. Emily picked it up with gauze and carried it to the sink. Warm water ran over the metal, turning brown as rust bled into the drain. At first there was nothing. Then the letters surfaced like bones from thawing ground. Ranger/K9/USN. The room seemed to lose several degrees. Jack did not move. Ranger, whose name had just returned to the world, stared at the door as if names were luxuries and survival remained the only honest work. Emily turned the tag in the light. "United States Navy." Jack's jaw tightened. "Yes? You knew?" "No." "But you suspected." He looked at Ranger, not at her. "I recognized the language." Emily set the tag on a clean towel and brought out a microchip scanner. When it passed over Ranger's shoulders, the device beeped. Jack hated the sound immediately. A chip meant records. Records meant offices, claims, policies, ownership. It meant some distant system could reach into this room and turn the old dog back into property. Emily typed the number into her computer. The clinic software moved with the speed of a sleepy mule. Jack waited beside Ranger, his hand hovering close to the scarred shoulder but not touching. Finally, a partial file appeared. Military working dog transfer, medical retirement review, private rehabilitation contractor, adoption hold, then gaps, missing updates, dead ends hidden behind polite language. Emily clicked again, and an archived handler record opened. A photograph loaded slowly. Petty Officer David Brooks, early 30s, lean and sun-browned, with sandy brown hair cropped short, a square jaw, and kind hazel eyes that looked too young for the uniform he wore. A small scar cut through one eyebrow. Beside him in the photo stood a younger Ranger, black and tan coat shining, ears high, body proud, mouth open in the almost smile of a dog who had not yet learned how long loyalty could hurt. Emily read quietly, "Primary handler, David Brooks. Status, deceased." Jack closed his eyes for half a second. "How?" "File doesn't say much. Line of duty death, overseas." Emily scrolled farther. "Secondary emergency contact, Sarah Brooks. Relationship, sister." Another small image appeared from an old contact form, probably copied from a driver's license. Sarah Brooks, late 30s, fair-skinned, with shoulder-length auburn hair, a narrow face, and serious green eyes that looked as if they had practiced being brave for other people. There was no smile in the photo, only endurance. Emily sat back. There may be someone who has been looking for him. Jack's answer came too fast. Don't call yet. Emily turned slowly. Jack. He's exhausted. He's hurt. He just learned this room doesn't want to kill him. You make a call, people start making decisions. Maybe the right people. Or the wrong office. His voice sharpened before he could sand it down. Ranger lifted his head. Jack lowered his tone, ashamed. Systems lose things, Emily. Dogs, men, whole lives. Then one day, a record wakes up and decides it owns what it abandoned. Emily looked at him for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer, but not weak. Maybe. But somewhere out there, a woman may have spent years wondering what happened to the last living piece of her brother. You're thinking about claims. I'm thinking about love. Jack looked at the rusted tag drying on the towel. Ranger's name sat there in wounded metal, no longer buried, no longer silent. The old dog lowered himself onto the mat, tired beyond argument. Jack wanted to protect him from the world, but Emily's words had already opened another door. Someone might have loved him. Someone might still. The question of Sarah Brooks remained between Jack and Emily like a match held too close to dry paper. Outside the clinic windows, Silver Creek had lost its morning softness. Snow no longer drifted. It drove sideways, hard and restless, scraping against the glass as if the mountains had decided to erase the town by hand. Ranger lay on the rubber mat with his head low and his old amber eyes open, the cleaned tag resting beside him on a folded towel. Emily Carter stood at the computer, one hand near the phone, her gray eyes fixed on Jack with that calm, infuriating honesty of hers. Jack knew what she wanted to say. Call her. Give the woman a chance to know. Let the past speak before fear writes the ending. But Jack saw only systems, offices, transfer forms, polite voices with cold authority, and an old dog being taken from the first warm room that had treated him like a living soul instead of a problem. 1 hour, he said, though even he did not know whether he was asking for Ranger or himself. Emily's mouth tightened. 1 hour to let him rest, not 1 hour to build a fortress around him. Before Jack could answer, the radio on Emily's counter cracked awake with a burst of static so sharp Ranger lifted his head. Sheriff Tom Harris's voice came through, thinner than usual beneath the storm noise. County dispatch to Silver Creek Rescue. We've got a North Ridge emergency near Silver Ridge Mine Road. Multiple civilians stranded. Visibility dropping fast. Emily grabbed the handset. Tom, this is Dr. Carter. Repeat location. Static chewed half the reply before his voice broke through again. Old Service Road past mile marker 12. Utility truck off the shoulder. Church van disabled nearby. At least 4 people, maybe 5. 1 adult male injured. 1 elderly female without access to heart medication. Jack turned toward the window. The mountains had disappeared. Only white remained, moving like a living wall. He knew that road. In summer, it was inconvenient. In winter, it was a blade laid across the ridge. No guardrail in places, soft shoulders, old mining pits hidden under snow, and wind that could move tracks from one side of the road to the other in minutes. Emily looked at him. She did not ask yet, which made it worse. Ranger had pushed himself upright now. The old German shepherd's body was tired, the left hip trembling, but his eyes had changed. Not alert in the way a pet hears a treat bag. Alert like a soldier hearing coordinates. At the fire hall, Maria Torres was already building order out of chaos. She was 41, compact and strong, with a deep brown skin, black hair braided tight down her back, and a face that seemed carved for decisions rather than comfort. A faded paramedic patch from Denver still marked one sleeve of her orange rescue jacket, though Silver Creek had claimed her years ago after she saved 2 boys from a flooded culvert and then stayed because the town needed someone who could tell panic to sit down and wait its turn. Maps covered the folding tables. Ropes, thermal blankets, oxygen kits, radios, flares, and medical bags lined the walls. A young volunteer named Kyle Bennett, barely 23 with freckles, nervous hands, and the hopeful face of a boy still learning that emergencies did not care how good your intentions were, tried to coil a rope and tangled it twice before Maria fixed it without looking angry. "Shaw," she said when Jack walked in, "I need you on the tracked unit. You've got drivers." "I've got drivers who know roads. I need the man who knows where the road stops pretending." Sheriff Tom Harris stood near the radio table, hat dusted white, his lined face tired but steady. "Dispatch confirmed names," he said. "Paul Whitaker, utility worker, 56. Red beard, bad ankle from an old rodeo injury before today made it worse. Ben Holloway, church van driver, mid-40s, big fellow, friendly as a Sunday potluck, not built for panic but not trained for this either. Mrs. Helen Parker, 72, widow, silver hair, small frame, heart condition, keeps her medication in a purse that may still be in the van. 2 others unconfirmed." The mention of Mrs. Parker tightened the room. Everyone in Silver Creek knew her, or knew of her. She was the kind of old woman who wore lavender sweaters, mailed birthday cards to children who had grown too busy to visit, and baked lemon bread for funerals because grief, in her opinion, should never be asked to sit hungry. Jack looked at the map. Silver Ridge Mine Road drifts shut before the second bend. If they missed the lower cut, they're not where dispatch thinks they are. Maria marked the paper with a grease pencil. "Then you're coming." "I didn't say that." "No, but your face did." Tom almost smiled. Jack did not. "I've got a dog at the clinic who can barely stand." "Then leave him at the clinic," Maria said. It should have been simple. It would have been simple yesterday. But the radio spat again, carrying a broken voice through the static. "Base, this is Whitaker. We moved toward cabin maybe. Driver confused. Mrs. Parker cold. Can't see road markers. Battery low." Then the signal died. The room held still. Jack knew the silence that followed a bad transmission. It was the silence of everyone imagining what the missing words might have been. He reached for the keys Maria held out. "Tracked unit only. No wheeled rescue past the plow line. No hero nonsense." "I run rescue," Maria said. "I ration hero nonsense by the teaspoon." Emily arrived 10 minutes later, snow in her hair, and Ranger nowhere beside her. "He's stable," she told Jack before he could ask. "Resting in the back room. I gave him fluids and pain support. He is not going up that mountain." "Good." The word should have felt like relief, but it landed strangely in Jack's chest. They were halfway through loading the medical packs when a bark cut through the open fire hall door. Once. Short, rough, commanding. Everyone turned. Ranger stood in the doorway, snow along his back. No leash, no coat, no permission. Behind him, Emily's Subaru sat crooked at the curb, rear door hanging open. Emily stared, breathless. "The clinic back latch," she whispered. "It sticks unless you kick it." Jack walked toward the dog. "Absolutely not." Ranger limped forward, slow but certain, each step paid for in pain. He stopped beside the map table, lowered himself to the floor, and looked up at Jack with the weary patience of an old soldier who had heard the mission and refused to be dismissed by age. Maria's eyes moved from Ranger to Jack. "Tell me why this dog just reported for duty." "Because he heard the radio." "That is not an answer." Emily knelt beside Ranger, anger and concern fighting across her face. "It may be the only true one." She touched his ribs, checked his gums, then looked up at Maria. "If he goes, he rides. He wears a thermal coat. He walks only if absolutely necessary. I decide when he stops. No one uses him like equipment." Jack's voice came low. "He's not equipment." Emily held his stare. "Then treat him like a teammate." The words struck Jack harder than they should have. A teammate could be protected. A teammate could be told no. A teammate could also choose to stand at the door when the call came, even with bad hips and a silver muzzle. Maria exhaled through her nose, then nodded once. "Conditions accepted. If he slows the rescue, he stays in the unit. If Dr. Carter says he's done, he's done. Mission first, but we don't break what helps us save lives." Jack looked down at Ranger. The old German shepherd did not wag his tail. He only watched the storm beyond the open door, as if the white road had called his name from a life before this one. And Jack understood, with a sadness too deep for argument, that some souls did not know how to survive being forbidden to protect. The tracked rescue unit crawled out of Silver Creek like an orange beetle pushing into the mouth of a white beast. Behind it, the fire hall lights blurred, then vanished, swallowed by snow so thick it seemed less like weather than a decision made by the mountains. Jack Miller kept both hands on the controls, shoulders squared, jaw tight beneath the rough shadow of his beard. The machine rattled under him, its black treads grinding through ice where ordinary tires would have spun and begged. Beside him, Maria Torres braced a paper map against her knee while the GPS blinked uncertainly in her gloved hand, its little arrow wandering as if even technology had lost courage. In the back, Emily Carter sat on the bench with one hand resting near Ranger's shoulder. The old German Shepherd lay on a padded blanket, wrapped in a dark thermal coat that made his silver muzzle look even paler. His hips trembled with every jolt, but his head stayed lifted between the seats, amber eyes fixed forward, not excited, not afraid, simply called. "Visibility's under 20 feet, Maria said. Jack leaned closer to the windshield. "It was under 20 feet 5 minutes ago. Now the storm's just bragging." Emily's voice came from the back, calm but watchful. Ranger's breathing steady. Payne's there, but he's holding. "He shouldn't have to hold anything," Jack muttered. Ranger's torn ear twitched as if the dog had heard and disagreed. The road climbed sharply past the last buried mailbox, then disappeared. Snow covered the shoulders, the ditch, the yellow line, every honest boundary between safety and falling. Jack drove from memory, from the slope under the treads, from the shape of the dark pines when they flashed briefly through the white. After 10 minutes, Ranger lifted his head higher. Emily felt the change before anyone spoke. "He's scenting." Maria looked back. "In this wind?" "German shepherds don't read weather reports," Jack said. He eased off the throttle. Ranger pushed himself onto his elbows, nose working toward the cracked rear vent. A faint bitterness slid through the cab, thin under the clean bite of snow. Diesel. Not theirs. Jack angled left before Maria could ask why. "Shoulder drops there," she warned. "I know." That answer is never comforting. The headlights caught a small flash of orange cloth snapping from a pine branch. Maria leaned forward. Utility vest. They found the truck 30 yards below the road, nose buried in a drainage cut, rear wheels half lifted from the snow like a drowned animal trying to climb out. The driver's door hung open. No engine, no lights, no man. Jack killed the unit but left the beams on. The cold rushed in when he opened the door, hitting his face like thrown gravel. He and Maria descended first, roped together, boots sinking past their knees. Inside the truck, Jack found a cracked radio, a steel lunchbox, a thermos spilled across the floorboard, and blood on the steering wheel. Not much, but enough to make the storm feel crueler. Footprints led away, already softening under fresh snow, one set dragging hard. "Paul Whitaker," Maria said, reading the name stitched on a utility jacket caught in the seat. 56. Red beard, rodeo ankle, bad even before tonight. "Now worse," Jack said. They followed the broken tracks into the trees. 15 yards in, a shape lay beneath a fallen branch. Paul Whitaker was broad across the chest, with a square wind-burned face and a red beard frozen white at the edges. His left leg lay at an ugly angle, and his lashes were crusted with ice. He had the stubborn look of a man who had spent his life fixing lines in bad weather and had never forgiven his body for failing him once. "Sir, can you hear me?" Maria asked, dropping beside him. Paul groaned. "Church van. Old Parker lady. Cold." Emily arrived with the medical pack, moving through the snow with fierce precision. She checked his pulse, pupils, breathing, then cut fabric away from the twisted ankle. "Fracture likely. Hypothermia starting. We move him now." Paul's eyes drifted toward the orange glow of the rescue unit. "Dog?" he whispered. Ranger stood visible through the rear window, nose lifted, watching. "Yes," Jack said. "He found you." Something like a smile cracked Paul's blue lips. "Good dog." It took all three of them to splint, wrap, and carry him. Ranger did not move when they loaded Paul beside him. The old shepherd only lowered his nose to the man's glove, sniffed once, then shifted his sore body to give the stretcher more space. Maria saw it and looked away quickly, as if respect had embarrassed her. They pushed on, heavier now, the rescue unit warmer with human breath, wet wool, medical packs, and fear. Ranger did not settle. He kept his nose near the vent. 20 minutes later, he made a sound so low it barely counted as a whine. Emily straightened. Something else. Jack opened the vent again. At first there was only snow, then smoke, faint as a dying candle. Maria scanned the map. The church van shouldn't be this far up. Storm moved them, or panic did, Jack said. Both have poor manners. The smoke led them around a bend and down a shallow slope where a white church van sat tilted against a snowbank, its rear bumper bent, its side painted with the faded words, Grace Chapel Outreach. Inside, Ben Holloway gripped the steering wheel with both hands, though the engine was dead. Ben was 44, large and soft-faced, with thinning brown hair plastered beneath a knit cap and kind eyes made frantic by helplessness. He looked like a man built to carry folding chairs, sing off-key hymns, and hand out casseroles, not decide who froze first. In the back seat, Mrs. Helen Parker sat wrapped in a thin church blanket, small as a sparrow beneath winter's fist. She was 72, with silver hair pinned loosely under a wool hat, delicate hands blue at the knuckles, and a little brown Bible pressed to her chest as if it were both prayer and anchor. "Her medicine's in her purse," Ben stammered when Jack opened the door. "We slid, and I couldn't find it. I tried to keep the heater going." Emily climbed in quickly, voice gentle but firm. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Emily. We're getting you warm." Helen blinked, her pale eyes watery but aware. "The dog came?" Jack looked back. Ranger was visible in the rescue unit, snow blowing around his silver face. "Yes, ma'am." "Then the Lord has unusual taste in angels," she whispered. Jack huffed despite himself. "He also has arthritis." They transferred Ben and Helen into the tracked unit, wrapped Helen with heat packs near her core, and found her medication under the second-row seat of the van, trapped beneath a fallen hymnal and a bag of donated mittens. As Jack climbed back behind the controls, a tree snapped somewhere above the road. The sound cracked across the mountain like rifle fire. Jack's hands locked. The windshield vanished. Snow became dust. Pine shadows became broken walls. Maria's voice turned distant. He was no longer in Colorado, but under a white-hot sky, with static screaming in his ear and a dog dropping before men understood death had arrived. The rescue unit drifted toward the outer edge. "Jack," Maria said sharply. He heard nothing. Then a warm nose pressed against his wrist. Ranger had dragged himself forward, shaking with pain, and touched Jack's glove, not pulling, not commanding, only returning him. Jack inhaled hard. Snow came back. The machine came back. The living people behind him came back. He corrected the unit before the tread slipped too far. No one spoke for several seconds. Jack looked down at Ranger's old amber eyes and understood, with a force that nearly broke him, that this time he had not saved the dog. The dog had saved him. For several seconds after Ranger touched Jack's hand, the rescue unit seemed to breathe with them, a metal lung full of snow, fear, and fragile human heat. Jack corrected the treads and pulled the machine back toward the inner bank, his pulse still hammering behind his ribs. Maria said nothing, which was her kindest form of mercy. Emily sat behind him with one hand braced against Ranger's side, feeling the tremor that ran through the old German shepherd's body, now that the small miracle of his strength had spent itself. Paul Whitaker lay wrapped in thermal blankets, jaw clenched against pain, while Ben Holloway whispered apologies to no one in particular, and Mrs. Helen Parker clutched her little Bible with both blue-knuckled hands. The rescue should have turned downhill then. They had found the utility worker, the church van driver, and Mrs. Parker. They had done what the call had asked. But stories of survival, like old roads under snow, often hid their worst turn after a man believed he had passed the danger. Helen stirred beneath the blankets, her silver hair damp against her pale forehead. "Lily," she whispered. Emily leaned closer. "Mrs. Parker, what did you say?" The old woman's eyes opened, watery and frightened now, in a way they had not been when she spoke of angels. Lily went for help. Sweet child. Red scarf. She said she could climb the rise and catch a phone signal. Ben Holloway's face drained of what little color the cold had left him. "I told her not to. I swear I told her. But the radio was dead and Mrs. Parker was shaking so bad, and Lily thought if she just got above the trees." His voice broke. "She slipped out while I was trying the engine again." Maria twisted in her seat. "Name, age, condition." Ben swallowed hard. "Lily Harper, 19. Church volunteer. Brown skin, black curly hair, small, maybe 5'2". Always smiling like she's personally responsible for keeping everyone hopeful. She was wearing a blue coat and a red scarf. No boots for hiking, just town boots. She's brave, but she's a kid." Jack looked through the windshield. Snow erased everything beyond the headlights. Any tracks Lily had left were gone, wiped clean by wind like chalk from a schoolboard. Maria checked the radio, but only static answered. "Base, this is Unit 1. We have one missing civilian, female, 19, likely on foot, requesting additional team toward Upper Ridge." Static spat and died. She tried again. Nothing. Emily's mouth tightened. "Temperature's dropping." "I know," Maria said. "We have 4 rescued civilians in the unit, 2 medically fragile. If we search blind and get stuck, we turn 1 missing into 7. Jack heard the truth in that. Truth had never been the same thing as comfort. Paul Whitaker opened one eye. "There's an old cut," he rasped. "Mining trail, east of the van." Locals used it before the county blocked the road. "Blocked for a reason?" Maria asked. Paul gave a grim little sound. "Everything up here is blocked for a reason." Jack knew the trail. Or rather, he knew stories of it. A narrow miner's path curling through pines toward an abandoned survey shack with sinkholes scattered under the snow where old tunnels had collapsed. In summer, a foolish teenager might dare it. In a whiteout, it was a mouth waiting to close. "We wait for backup," Maria said, though she did not sound convinced by herself. Ranger stood. Not quickly, not cleanly. His rear legs shook as if the bones had become old wires. Emily caught him under the chest before he could fall. "No," she said, and this time the word carried the full authority of a doctor and a woman who had already watched too many creatures spend themselves for people who did not deserve them. Ranger did not look at her. His nose pointed toward the dark shape of pines on the left side of the road. Jack turned in his seat. "Ranger!" The dog's amber eyes shifted to him. There was no plea in them, no wild eagerness, no promise that he would be fine. That was what broke Jack open. Ranger was not asking permission because he believed himself strong. He was offering the last clear thing he had left. Jack saw it as plainly as he had seen the old hand signal in the snow behind the gas station. "This may be the final work I can do, and I know the cost." Emily's voice softened, but did not weaken. "Jack, his body can't take much more. I know. Knowing doesn't make it kinder." Jack reached back and rested his hand near Ranger's neck, careful of the tender skin where the old collar had been. "No," he said, "but leaving that girl out there won't be kind either." Maria looked from Jack to Ranger, then to Helen Parker, whose lips moved in silent prayer. "We do this controlled," Maria said. 10 minutes on foot, rope line. If we don't get a clear sign, we return to the unit, mark position, and try radio again." Ranger gave one short breath through his nose, as if unimpressed by bureaucracy, but willing to tolerate it. They left Ben and Paul secured inside with heat packs and emergency instructions. Helen caught Jack's sleeve before he stepped down. "She sings when she's afraid." the old woman whispered. Old hymns. Off-key. Don't tell her I said that. Jack nodded. Outside, the cold struck with teeth. Emily fitted Ranger's boot covers as best as she could, though he lifted one paw with deep offense, making Maria mutter, "At least he still has opinions." Jack clipped a loose guideline to Ranger's harness, not to pull him, only to keep the storm from stealing him. The old dog lowered his nose and moved toward the pines. Every step hurt him. Jack could see it in the tight line of his back, the tremble in his hips, the way his paws sank and rose with stubborn deliberation. But Ranger did not wander. He chose. 10 yards in, the road vanished behind them. The pines closed like dark cathedral pillars, their branches bowed under snow. Ranger stopped once, sniffed the air, then angled right. Maria nearly stepped ahead, impatient with the slow pace, when Ranger barked once, sharp and furious. Jack grabbed Maria's shoulder and pulled her back. Her boot had landed inches from a smooth white hollow. Emily swept her flashlight low. The beam revealed the faint circular sag of snow over empty space. A sinkhole. Old mine collapse. Maria stared at it, then at Ranger. "Good catch, partner," she said quietly, and in her voice there was no doubt left. They looped around the hollow, following Ranger through a narrow cut between rocks. Twice he stumbled. Twice Jack steadied him. The third time, Ranger froze, ears forward. Through the storm came a sound so thin Jack almost thought his heart had invented it. A voice, singing badly. Emily turned her head. "Do you hear that?" Maria lifted her flashlight. "Lily!" The answer came as a broken cry from below. They found the survey shack half buried beside a cluster of pines, its roof sagging, its door wedged open by snow. Inside, Lily Harper sat curled against the far wall, red scarf wrapped around one hand, blue coat powdered white, black curls frozen against her cheeks. She was small, just as Ben had said, with a round young face, brown eyes too large with cold, and a stubborn chin that suggested hope was not a habit for her, but a decision she kept making. "I tried to go back," she whispered when Emily reached her. "I saw the hole. I didn't know where the road was." "You did right staying put," Emily said, checking her hands, her pupils, her breathing. "You hear that, Jack? A 19-year-old with better survival sense than half the men in this county." Jack would have answered, but Ranger folded. Not dramatically. His legs simply stopped holding the treaty they had made with his courage. He dropped beside Jack's boots, breath rough, eyes still open. "Ranger!" Jack fell to his knees and pulled the dog against him, wrapping his coat around the trembling body. For once, he did not care who saw his face. Maria lifted Lily with Emily's help and guided her toward the rope line. The mission had lives to carry. Jack had only one old soldier in his arms. He pressed his forehead to Ranger's silver muzzle and whispered into the storm, "It's over, partner. The mission's over. This time, nobody gets left behind." Dawn found Silver Creek bruised but breathing. The storm had passed east before sunrise, leaving the mountains buried under a white silence so deep it seemed the whole world was afraid to speak first. The tracked rescue unit came down from Silver Ridge with its orange sides crusted in ice, carrying the living like a stubborn little ark. Paul Whitaker was pale and shivering but awake, muttering that he would rather wrestle a transformer than ride with Jack again. Ben Holloway kept one arm around Lily Harper, who had stopped shaking enough to laugh weakly when Mrs. Helen Parker told her she sang "Amazing Grace," like a frightened goose, but that God had heard worse and forgiven it. Maria Torres drove the last mile, while Jack sat in the back with Ranger wrapped inside his coat. The old German shepherd's silver muzzle rested against Jack's chest, his breath shallow but steady, each exhale a small promise Jack was terrified to believe. By the time they reached Emily Carter's clinic, Jack's arms had gone numb, but he refused to let anyone else carry him. Emily met them at the door with her hair half fallen from its knot, her face drawn with exhaustion and command. "Table," she said, and no one argued. For the next hour, Ranger became the center of a small battlefield made of warm towels, oxygen, fluids, careful hands, and quiet prayers people pretended were only breath. Jack stood by the wall, useless in the way strong men hate most, watching Emily work over the dog who had found lost people, stopped Maria from stepping into death, and pulled Jack back from the war inside his own skull. When Ranger's breathing steadied and his eyes opened, Emily finally sat back on her heels. "He's alive," she said. Jack closed his eyes. Something inside him sank to its knees. "But?" he asked, because men like him distrusted mercy unless it came with a price. Emily wiped her wrist across her forehead. "But he's old. His hips are bad. His body has been asked to pay debts it never owed. He will need rest, medication, warmth, food, and someone patient enough not to mistake silence for peace." Jack looked at Ranger. The dog's torn ear twitched faintly. "How long?" Emily's expression softened, and that frightened him more than bad news. "I don't know. Months, maybe years if the world finally behaves itself. His heart is stronger than anything written in that file." By noon, the town knew enough to come quietly. Not all at once, not in a parade, but in the old mountain way. A casserole left on the clinic steps, a thermos of coffee for Emily, a folded blanket from Mrs. Parker, a new dog bed that Earl Mason left outside the door without signing his name. Jack saw it and said nothing, which was kinder than teasing the man into shame. That evening, after Ranger had eaten 3 small portions and fallen asleep with one paw touching Jack's boot, Emily placed Sarah Brooks's contact record on the counter. "Now," she said. Jack stared at the number as if it might bite. "What if she wants him? Then you listen. What if she blames me? For finding him. For being the one who gets to keep him alive now?" Emily did not answer quickly. "Love doesn't always arrive as ownership, Jack." So he called. Sarah Brooks answered from Boise, Idaho, her voice cautious and tired, the voice of a woman who had learned not to hope too loudly. She arrived 2 days later in a blue pickup with Idaho plates, stepping into Silver Creek under a sky scrubbed clean by winter sun. Sarah was 39, tall and slender, with fair skin freckled by years outdoors, shoulder-length auburn hair tucked behind one ear, and green eyes that held grief the way some people hold a family Bible, carefully, daily, without showing everyone the worn pages. She wore a navy wool coat, worn brown boots, and no jewelry except a thin silver chain around her neck. When Jack met her outside the clinic, she studied him with a guarded kindness that made him stand straighter. "You're Jack Miller?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't ma'am me, I'm grieving, not ancient." Jack blinked, and Emily, standing behind him, looked dangerously close to smiling. Sarah carried an old envelope against her chest. Inside were photographs. David Brooks in uniform, younger and sun-browned, kneeling beside Ranger when the dog's coat still shone black and gold. David laughing as Ranger stole a glove. David sleeping on a cot while Ranger lay beneath it like a guardian spirit with teeth. In the last photo, David had one hand on Ranger's head and the other raised toward whoever held the camera. Sarah's thumb trembled over the image. "My brother wrote that Ranger hated cameras because he believed stillness should be used only for ambushes and naps." Jack let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Then Emily opened the exam room door. Ranger lay on a thick blanket near the heater, his silver muzzle lifted. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Sarah covered her mouth. "Oh," she whispered, and the sound broke in half. Ranger's ears shifted. His old eyes fixed on her face, not with recognition at first, but with the deep searching of a creature walking through fog toward a voice from another life. Sarah knelt slowly, tears running freely now. "Hey, soldier," she said. "You remember David? He never stopped loving you. We didn't either. We just couldn't find you." Ranger rose with painful dignity, took 2 stiff steps, and lowered his head into her hands. Sarah wept into his fur, not loudly, not dramatically, but like a door finally opening in a house that had been locked for years. Jack turned away because some reunions were sacred ground. Later, Sarah sat with Jack outside the clinic while Ranger slept between them under a blanket. "I thought I'd want to take him home," she said. Jack's hands tightened. Sarah noticed. "Part of me still does, but he chose you before I ever got here. He doesn't owe me anything. That's not how choosing works." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a faded navy patch, edges worn soft. This was David's. He would have wanted Ranger with someone who speaks his language. "Keep him warm, Mr. Miller. Let him retire from saving everyone." Jack took the patch as if it weighed more than metal. 3 days later, Silver Creek held a small gathering at the rescue hall. No marching band, no speeches polished smooth, no flag waving big enough to frighten the truth. Just Paul Whitaker on crutches, Ben Holloway with a plate of cookies, Lily Harper wearing her red scarf, Mrs. Parker with her Bible and a tissue, Maria with her arms crossed to hide emotion, Emily with Ranger's medication schedule in her pocket, Sarah with David's photographs, and Jack standing beside an old German shepherd whose cleaned K9 tag shone against a new soft collar. When Mrs. Parker said Ranger had been an answer to prayer, Ranger sneezed, and the whole room laughed through tears. That became the kind of miracle Silver Creek could understand. In the months that followed, Jack opened the back bay of his garage twice a week for old working dogs, rescue volunteers, and veterans who did not always know how to come home. Maria called it a training program. Emily called it supervised stubbornness. Sarah sent more photos of David and sometimes letters. Earl Mason donated dog food anonymously, though everyone knew because he complained loudly about anonymous generosity being expensive. Ranger never had to stand guard in the snow again. He had a thick blanket beside the stove, a bowl of warm water that never froze, medicine hidden in roast chicken, and a man who no longer pretended he needed no one. Each night, Jack hung David's patch above the office door, checked the locks, lowered himself beside the old dog, and rested one hand near Ranger's silver muzzle. "Good night, partner," he would say, and Ranger, ancient guardian of roads, storms, soldiers, and lost hearts, would close his eyes at last. In the end, Ranger's story reminds us that miracles do not always arrive with thunder from the sky. Sometimes they come quietly through a wounded dog, an old collar, a forgotten tag, a stranger who chooses to stop, and a heart brave enough to open again. Maybe God places certain souls in our path not by accident, but by grace, to teach us that no life is too broken to be loved, no past too heavy to be redeemed, and no act of kindness too small to change someone's world. In our everyday lives, we may pass by someone who is hurting, lonely, abandoned, or simply waiting to be seen, and sometimes the smallest mercy, a warm meal, a gentle word, a helping hand, a moment of patience, can become the miracle they prayed for. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith, loyalty, and love between humans and animals. May God bless you, protect your family, comfort your heart, and guide you to be someone's miracle when they need it most.